Hi, this is Stuart Talley. I'm the partner here responsible for the prosthetic hip litigation. And the reason we're doing this video today is to provide an update on the ongoing DePuy Pinnacle metal-on-metal hip trial. Right now, there are 5 cases being tried in Dallas, Texas, and it's being tried in a joint trial on behalf of 5 people. And we're in a couple days into the trial, and we're providing updates on what's happening in the trial. We're following it very closely. Today, Andrew Ekdahl was on the stand again. He is the former CEO of DePuy, who was there when the Pinnacle was being developed. During cross-examination of Mr. Ekdahl, there was a lot of startling admissions that were made by him throughout the trial, and a lot of interesting information came out today. First, the plaintiff's attorney was able to get Mr. Ekdahl to admit that when the Pinnacle metal-on-metal hip was released to the public, DePuy really had no idea what the health impact would be of metal ions being released from the hip. There were a series of documents back in 2000, 2001, where engineers and doctors working for DePuy were having some concerns about metal ions being released from the hip. And Ekdahl admitted that they sold the product for many years without knowing what the true health impacts were. Another line of questioning went into the safety of the Pinnacle. One of the defenses that DePuy has brought up is that the reason the failure rate and the revision rate for the Pinnacle is so high is because of lawyer advertising. They've sort of painted this picture that there's ads on television and that people who have perfectly good hips ran to their surgeons and asked to have the hips revised because they saw an ad on television from a lawyer. The plaintiff's attorney did a really good job of diffusing that entire line of defense. The reason the hips were being revised and the reason DePuy stopped selling so many is because there were so many problems with the hip. There was a series of articles that came out in the medical literature in 2008 through 2010 calling into question metal-on-metal hips. There was also a series of newspaper articles describing problems with these hips and the fact that doctors had to revise them. And so the idea that the Pinnacle was taken off the market because of lawyer advertising and because of people getting unnecessary revision surgeries was really shot down today. There was lots and lots of evidence that the reason doctors stopped using metal-on-metal was because they were having problems with it. Another line of questioning that was really, I would describe it as shocking, involved DePuy's conduct with a ball called the A-sphere. And what happened was, the story that was told at trial today was that in 2008, lots of doctors were calling into question metal-on-metal hips. So 2008 through 2010, articles are coming out saying metal-on-metal may not be the best thing or as good as what the manufacturers would have us believe. And so internally within DePuy, they were very concerned about these articles. And so they came out with a plan, and the plan was to create a new ball, and they would call it the A-sphere. And they would tell the medical community that this new ball was much better than the old ball, and that it greatly reduced metal wear debris. So they came out with this ball, the A-sphere, and there was a series of emails between marketing and engineering where they're discussing the A-sphere ball, and in those emails, it becomes clear that the A-sphere ball was no different than the other ball, that it was purely a marketing trick. There's actually an email from an engineer saying, why don't we just take the old balls and change the name? Because it's the same thing. So that line of questioning was really shocking, and you really got to see behind the scenes how marketing and profits really drove a lot of the decisions of this company. The other thing that they got into was during opening statement, the defense attorney made a lot of statements about how great DePuy is as a company, indicating it's a good company. Johnson & Johnson is a good company. And the judge ruled that that opened the door to the plaintiffs introducing evidence that it's not a good company. It's not a good company with good morals. One of the key pieces of evidence that was introduced with Mr. Ekdahl was what's called a deferred prosecution agreement. So back in the early 2000s, 2006, 2007, DePuy got in trouble because they were found to have been paying bribes to surgeons to use their hips. And the FBI investigated, and eventually DePuy entered into what's called a deferred prosecution agreement. So they agreed to change their practices, to not pay bribes to surgeons anymore. They acknowledged that they were doing it, and they took responsibility for it. And as a result, the Attorney General agreed not to prosecute them criminally. When Mr. Ekdahl was asked about this deferred prosecution agreement, he refused to acknowledge any of the facts in there. When he was asked whether DePuy paid bribes to doctors and surgeons, he said that they didn't. And when he was asked why he was not taking responsibility when the deferred prosecution agreement said his company was, he really didn't have an answer for that question. So that was some very good evidence for the plaintiffs that got put in today. Another sort of line of questioning that was interesting was during opening statement, the defense attorney made some arguments about advertising. One of the things that's come up in this case is that there was a lot of advertising for the Pinnacle that was saying things like it had a 99.9% success rate. They were telling doctors in ads that there was one study where they put in 3,000 of these hips and none had been revised, when it really wasn't true. And so what the defense argued during opening statement was that these advertisements really don't matter, that you don't need to look at them, they don't matter, because doctors do not rely on advertising. When they make medical decisions, they rely only on the science, so to speak. Now, during the cross-examination of Mr. Ekdahl, the plaintiff's attorney was able to show that DePuy spent lots of money, millions and millions of dollars on advertising. They had a huge sales force that would go out and advertise and try to get doctors to use their product. They also spent millions of dollars during the 2008 Olympics on advertising, direct-to-consumer advertising, actual television ads and newspaper ads and magazine ads using Coach K as their spokesperson. Coach K never actually had any DePuy Pinnacle hip, but they used him as a spokesperson anyway. And so what came across, I think, very effectively was that if advertising really doesn't work, why is DePuy spending so much time doing it? And Mr. Ekdahl really did not have a very good persuasive answer to those kinds of questions. Now, the final thing that they sort of went into today was medical research that had been done. And what came out of this was there was a point in time where there was a lot of concern about metal and the impact that metal ions might have on patients. And so there was a series of emails between people at DePuy and a surgeon in the medical community who agreed that he would do a clinical study. He would do a study where they would enroll a bunch of people into this study. They would see how the metal Pinnacle compared to other hips. And what's interesting about this string of emails is that Ekdahl and this researcher discussed how they would structure the funding of the study so that if the study came out negatively, DePuy could claim that they had nothing to do with it. Because if it's a DePuy funded study and it has bad results, DePuy has to live with that. If it's an outside study that DePuy doesn't have their name attached to and it comes out bad, they can criticize it and say there's something wrong with that study. So that was another sort of piece of shocking evidence that came in. When you read these emails internally within DePuy, like I said before, you can tell it's really a company that's guided by sales and profit a lot more than it is the safety of their devices and the benefit of patients and the welfare of patients. So today I think was a really good day for the plaintiffs. Stay tuned because we'll give some more updates as the trial progresses. We're following it very closely. If you have any questions about the trial or any questions about your personal circumstances, or if you have a metal-on-metal Pinnacle hip, we'd be happy to speak with you. You can reach us at the phone number on the screen, or you can fill out our online form and we'll get back to you right away.